Hi, everyone. It's Sandy here. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today for the third Making Connections Matter webcast about surviving the holiday mixer and other events during the next few months. So I'm excited to dig into this one because it's one of my favorite topics, as most of you probably know. And today, along with my special guest, Maria Ross, who, by the way, is a perfect guest for this webcast because she and I met in an elevator while on our way to a networking event when we were both living in Seattle. We both live in the San Francisco Bay Area now, but coincidentally are also from the Midwest. So there was an instant connection, I think, when we hit that button to go on the same floor and go to the same event. So Maria is a consultant, an author, and a speaker, and also an actress. And she believes that cash flow and creativity are not mutually exclusive. She's the chief brand strategist and creator of Red Slice, a digital elixir of stories and strategies to boost your business, your brand, and your brain. She's the author of two books, Branding Basics for Small Business, which is in the second edition right now, as well as a humorous and heartfelt memoir she wrote called Rebooting My Brain, which I highly recommend. You can find both of those books on Amazon. Welcome, Maria.
Thanks for having me, Sandy, and I'm excited to do this today.
Yay, I knew this was going to be fun. Your game.
Yeah, and this is a topic I know you and I hear time and time again. I mean, you hear it from the networking world. I hear it from sort of the how do I brand and market my business space. So given that it's the holiday season and it's the season of mixers, it's very, very timely.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Okay, so I just want to explain the structure of the webcast. We're going to go through some slides because it's just the best way to visually reinforce some of this. You aren't going to see us today, but you see our lovely little headshots here, and we'll follow up with you folks after the call, however you'd like, if you'd like. But we're going to go through the slides. We're going to go through 7 tips, and then we're definitely going to have time for Q&A, and we're aiming to wrap up the webinar at 12:45 and get you back to your regular day. So I just wanted to start out. We can go to the next slide. I think what we wanted to do today was sort of acknowledge the fact that a lot of people dread the holiday mixer. And I wanted to think about that and think about why is that? And I mean, a lot of people dread networking events, but I think the holidays bring a special sort of challenge for some of us. But so many times there's just an insane number of company parties, mixers, chamber events, open houses at the neighbors. I mean, the list just goes on, and just the thought of those can create high anxiety for many people, even myself included. Even as an extrovert, I still just sometimes get overwhelmed with the amount of time I'm going to need to be what I call on during the last few months of the year. And so then I think Maria's going to help us think through some of our introductions at those events, because quite frankly, I don't know anyone who does a better job of introducing herself at a round robin at any meeting. So let's talk about some of these, Maria, these bad behaviors, right? I've listed a few. This idea of, that business card commando, and that person is someone who's either trying to grab your card or someone who's trying to shove their card in your face.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the hit and runs, the people you sort of encounter who sort of quickly deduce whether they think you're worth talking to or not. Right? These are all things that make people dread this. And then, of course, the overindulgers, right? The people who are maybe a little nervous, so they drink too much.
Exactly. A little too much holiday spirit.
Yeah. And then there's a whole nother set of problems that it comes up, because I always talk about going to events, and I know you think this way too, about being memorable, right? And getting your brand message out there, your personal brand, professional brand, whichever one you're focused on that day. But these things are great ways to ding that brand as far as I'm concerned.
Right, absolutely. And I think a lot of the issue also of this dread you're talking about, I mean, I know I feel it too, is it's sort of like, am I going to have anything in common with the people that I'm going to encounter except for the fact that we're all going to a networking event and we're hoping to do business with each other. So what I love about what we're going to talk about today is a mindset and an approach of how to deal with some of these people gracefully and tactfully, but also how to avoid being these people, the business card commando and what have you.
Yeah. And this other reason that I think people dread it is a lot of times, I mean, networking has gotten a bad reputation over the years. I think it's coming around
Absolutely.
quite a bit, but I know that a lot of people, it just means or it feels like you're going out there with your hand out, right? That
Hmm.
you are in that position, and somehow that's a mind game we play with ourselves because it doesn't have to be that way. But somehow we decide that when you're going to a networking event, you're sort of dreading people's reactions because you assume that they assume you want something from them or something.
Exactly, exactly. Like they've already prejudged you walking up to them, and really you just maybe think, you saw them speak and you thought they were really interesting and you just want to talk to them and get to know them. And it's nothing about like, I'm going to ask you for something. So, yeah, I think we look at other people at those events with that same lens as well. And everybody's got their guard up.
Right. And the reality is we know that, most people do approach networking situations like these with the intention to either learn some of the latest industry kind of intel or maybe share best practices about blogging or to make connections and just meet new people, and as you said, to deepen some of the relationships. And that's what I want to talk about next on the next slide. I found this great chart that was in this study that talks about what are the things that really create value in your network. And the obvious winner here is the level of the relationship. And this is really important because it's not about quantity, right? This is about deepening those relationships. And one of the things that I think at this time of year, you have all these great opportunities to do that. And instead of thinking about needs um, of your own, especially, it's the idea is to just get to know people better, as you said earlier, Maria. That idea that you maybe only see them at the AMA's annual holiday party, right? Maybe that's the only time you really see them in person. Maybe there's communication online, but the reality is face to face is what solidifies a lot of connections today,
Hmm.
especially in the digital age, right? People are sort of craving for that connectivity that you can only get in person. And that's what these opportunities over the next few months offer us, are ways to really deepen those connections. And
Right.
this data just proves that that's really the important thing to focus on.
Right. And I think a lot of it too is, when you get in front of somebody that you haven't seen in a while, and it's true for them getting in front of you as well, is, you kind of forget that there's these people that you know and that you've already connected with that can offer these amazing services. And so it's not like they're selling you at the event, but when you see them, it sort of sparks a, oh, hey, I'm so glad I ran into you because I've been meaning to do an update on my website. And I'm so glad we ran into each other. So there's these organic opportunities for building the business that only happen when someone is literally right in front of you.
Right. And you start to realize, because what do we all know? We know that people work with people they like and trust.
Hmm.
So there's that reminder that oh yeah, I really liked her. I want to talk with her some more. God, it'd be
Hmm.
fun to work on my website with her.
Hmm.
That kind of a thing. Because we can get our website done by anyone, but we
Right.
we'd like to have a better experience if we could. And right, if it's going to be with somebody fun and that we enjoy, all the more they're going to get our business. So let's look at the next slide because this is one of my favorite quotes of all time. And this quote, I just think, is a great way to sort of get into our reframing process so that we can stop dreading these events. And it's from Dale Carnegie. And I use this quote all the time in my talks and in my webinars. And it's just a reminder that, when you go out and about, the idea really is to try and get to know other people as opposed to trying to get them interested in you. And if you have that mindset, you're going to be successful. You are going to have the kind of opportunities and the kind of network that you need to get what you want to accomplish accomplished, and vice versa, right? Because you naturally then sort of attract and meet the people that want to work with you as well, and you're able to reciprocate that. So I
Well, and
just
you know what I love about this quote, Sandy? What's so great about it is this is the quote that's meant for all the people that go, I hate selling or I'm an introvert. Because
right,
that's why they're actually better at that than
right,
a lot of people, because it starts with your interest in other people, not going out there ready to talk about everything you're doing and everything that you need.
Right. And we're going to talk about that because that's definitely one of my points I like to drive home in terms of who's really good at actually making quality connections. So we're ready for the next slide. So the next slide is our first tip. And our first tip is about reframing this process. And the thing here is to remember that networking, and I always break this down because it bears repeating. First of all, a network is a group of people that connect for either professional or social purposes. And usually what happens in that group is there's an exchange process that takes place. And the idea is that you're exchanging, whether it's information, whether it's ideas, whether it's resources. And remember, resources could be contacts, it could be websites, it could be magazines to read, it could be articles, it doesn't matter. But the idea is when you go out, that's really all networking is. It's about building this group of people that you can exchange with, and exchange being the operative word here. And once people sort of start to think of it that way and stop thinking of it as that it's this one-sided phenomenon, right? That is either your handout or their handout, you can start to relax a little bit. And one of the best ways that I think you can do that is, by being curious, by making it more about learning about other people and understanding that you don't have to be a natural at networking or a born networker. Networking skills can be learned, just like management skills or communication skills or leadership skills. It just takes knowledge and practice and an understanding of what's effective and what isn't. And the things that are effective are these things: be curious and to listen, right? These are the things that make people want to engage with you when you're curious about them and you're offering an exchange of ideas or information. So, one of my goals is to try and always redefine networking into an activity that's ultimately satisfying and maybe even, motivating to people, that it can be something to look forward to as opposed to dread. So I'm sure you have some thoughts on this, Maria.
Yeah, I mean, and absolutely, it's all about providing another or having another forum to present yourself and your brand to the world. It's not necessarily going in there selling, as we talked about, but get out there and get up with the latest tips that are going on in your industry. Get out there and meet the people that are doing cool things in your local area or in your field, and just know that this is just it's kind of, I mean, it's not always quote unquote free. Sometimes you have to pay to attend the event or pay for the dinner or what have you, but this seems a heck of a lot easier than people banging their heads against the wall trying to invest money in sales and promotions and marketing campaigns. And this, we're going to talk about this later, but it's just a natural forum for you to present your brand to the world in a very safe environment, and have people get to know the real you, the real person behind your business or behind your company, and about your passions, and give them a taste of what the experience of working with you will be like.
Exactly. Exactly. That's really well put. So I think we're ready for number 2. So obviously, making a good first impression is important. And this is the thing that, some people can get major anxiety about. But the reality is we all have within our power the most magical way to create a good first impression, and it's smiling, right? Like, I'm
So
always
simple.
astounded when I go to these events, and even I tease people a lot when I speak because, and I'm sure this happens to you too, Maria, when you're talking, and a lot of times you're talking to a group and you're looking around and there's just all these furrowed brows or these really intense
Yes.
sort of looks. And I always bring up this tip early on in my talks because I want people to recognize that I will remember every face in that room that smiled at me,
Hmm.
because they smiled and they buoyed me, right? They gave me this little boost
Hmm.
of inadvertent encouragement that just helped me keep going. And that is the same thing at an event, right? Whether it's at a table, whether it's in a big crowded room, this idea of just smiling, and it doesn't have to be a Cheshire grin, right? It just
Right.
a slight smile instead of that really,
Worried expression. Yeah.
right, it is worried. And we know that a lot of times the worry is nervousness, right? That there's this anxiety about what am I going to say? Who am I going to talk to? And it's on our face. And we have to really try and think about removing that as quickly as possible, at least keeping a neutral face, right?
Right. Right. And
So
that's
that,
going to go a lot farther than, even, I mean, I know we're going to talk a little bit about sort of having a memorable intro and all of that, but that can get you a lot farther. Just that body language can get you a lot farther than anything that might come out of your mouth.
right. And let's talk about this tight and memorable intro because,
This
you
is
know,
my pet peeve.
yeah. And this is why I was so grateful you wanted to chat about this today, because I know you've got some great thoughts on this and helpful advice for people. So I have my
Yeah,
take on this, but I want you to share yours today.
absolutely. I mean, I think the number one thing is you should never be thinking about what your intro is when you're in the room in the moment that you're meeting someone. And
Mhm.
you and I have both been to sort of countless um, networking events where it's like really you weren't prepared to talk about just the name of your business and what your business does. Like you knew you were going into a networking event. So at the very least, if you have to practice it in front of a mirror, practice it in front of a mirror. But you should have just a very simple, this is what I do, this is for whom I do it, and this is the value that I offer. So I'm a website designer. I work with small businesses and solo entrepreneurs, and I help them present their best selves on the internet. Boom. That's it. I mean, that's all it really has to be. Or whatever is passionate or valuable about your business or your field, but just have that ready. Don't be fumbling for the words when you're in the situation, because we talked about, this is about making a good first impression, and you've only got that little bit of time to promote your business. And for the love of Pete, everyone needs to remember to say the name of their business or website. I can't tell you how many times I've met people at networking events and they tell me what they do, and they even say
How's that?
perfect.
All right. So the one thing that I wanted to say about the intros is just this idea that when people are at events and you're in a group talking, or there are, it's the table and it's your turns coming up, that to Maria's point earlier about practicing this ahead of time, we all get that adrenaline rush that starts to kick in as your turn is coming, right? It even happens to me still.
Hmm.
Maria, I don't know if it's still
It happens. It totally happens to me.
right.
It
Like we
happens
all,
to everybody. Yeah.
yeah. So that is why it's so important to really practice your intro, and to practice it. Even one of my favorite tips is to do it on your voice memo on your phone, right? Like just try it when you're in the car, practice it
Hmm.
places where it doesn't matter and it's low risk.
Yeah. And
So
the
go
other
ahead.
point about that, Sandy, that I just want to bring up is also, respect the time limits. So if you're at an event where you sort of have, they give you a few minutes for everyone at the table to introduce themselves and say a little bit about their business, don't ramble for 5 minutes. You all have to get a turn at the table. So keep this tight. Keep it to 20 to 30 seconds, because I guarantee you're going to be more memorable just doing 20 seconds than if you ramble for 5 minutes.
Exactly.
Um, because people will remember, oh, that's the cool woman that didn't take very long to introduce herself.
Right.
so so yeah, it's very important to keep it tight.
Right. Okay. So I'm just being mindful of time here, and it
Yeah.
is flying by. So easier to answer small talk, right? This is how you can make a good impression. And part of it is something we kind of alluded to earlier about using place and situation or event as your starting topic, right? I always think it's harkens back to the wedding, right? At a wedding, everyone can ask, do you know the bride or the groom? So conversation ensues from there for a good 2 hours usually, right? Because everyone starts telling
Mhm.
stories about the bride or the groom, and it goes on and on. Well, when you go to any event, even to the neighbor's holiday open house, how do you know the Thompsons? Or, whatever it is, use where you are as a way to start talking. It's, you don't have to launch into that. So what do you do kind of thing, right? And then at this time of year, it's almost not even appropriate to go there. You can let that happen organically in the conversation. And then of course, watch the alcohol, right? Sometimes that's we might have a drink because we're a little nervous or we're stressed out, but really be mindful of that, because we're talking about trying to be memorable here, and Lord knows that's not how you want to be memorable, right?
In a good way.
Right, right. And not being that person that, like, oh, was that the guy that had a few too many and was karaokeing Jingle Bells all night, whatever it might be mindful. So the other thing here, offering help to others, right? This is this idea that you have to remember you are going to encounter people who are out and about at this time of year who maybe do need help with something. And there's a really good chance that there's a lot of them out there that, otherwise, my favorite thing, they'd be home watching Dancing with the Stars. But instead, they went to the mixer, they came to the holiday party because there maybe is something going on in their life that they might need help with. And I think it's a choice we can all make to try and find out whether people need help with anything in their lives right now, right? And one of my favorite ways to get at that is part of so what's keeping you busy these days, Maria, right?
Mhm.
Letting Maria then answer. Maybe she wants to tell me about her beautiful little baby boy. Maybe she wants to talk about a new brand boot camp she's launching. I mean, whatever it might be, she's going to decide. And we will let the conversation go from there. But I want to make it easy for her to get to an ask if she has one, right? Maybe she's going to say, I'm looking for more readers for my blog. I'm really trying to build up, my reputation as a blogger, whatever it might be, right? But the idea is to be willing to offer that help to people. And again, remembering that the help can be ideas, it could be information, it could be resources, it could be contacts, it could be knowledge, whatever. And just think about that, even especially at this time of year, that this is just good social karma in the bank, right? That you don't have to expect anything in return, but that by helping and giving at this time, you're forging a new connection with somebody. And it isn't about a pay it back. Again, it's just about putting that out there and helping people achieve their goals. So I'm going to keep going. Always have a goal, right? Being specific and realistic about this. When you go to these events, there's nothing wrong with setting a mindset or an intention to accomplish certain things at the event, right? You're going to spend money on parking. You're going to possibly spend money on a ticket. All those things, come up with some goals and be specific about them and realistic. But my advice is always to make those goals about helping others or learning more about their business or learning more about what the speaker is going to talk about, or like those are perfect goals. But my idea is that you feel that you accomplished something when you went out, that you didn't just have a good time, but you also accomplished a few things that you set out to do. And
Right.
Maria mentioned this earlier too, this idea of deepening, using it to deepen connections. That's a great goal. So Maria, I don't know if you want to chime in
Yeah,
on this.
I was just going to say, this is just like when I work with my clients on their brand and marketing goals. I mean, we touched a little bit on this, but networking is just a part of your marketing plan. It's one of the activities you have to do, just like blogging, just like being on social media. Networking is a part of your marketing plan. And just like any part of your marketing plan, any marketing that you do should have a goal. So even if, whether it's anecdotal or it's qualitative or quantitative, whatever it is for this event, for me, I always, when I decide to go to an event, number one, the event, maybe the speaker has to be of interest to me. And so one of the goals is I'm going to learn something from that speaker. But then the other goal I always have when I go into networking events that's served me very well is if I end up just forging a very good connection with only one or two people at this event. The goal is not to collect 90 business cards. But if I just meet one person that I can either refer to one of my clients or that can provide a service for me, or that is just a really cool person to get to know, that maybe down the road they might be able to support me in my business endeavors, then I feel like that event is a success.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. And to that point about collecting the cards, I mean, one of the things that I always caution people is if you are in that mindset and maybe you're not going after 90 cards, but let's say you decide you want 15 cards, right? Is it really realistic that you're going to actually follow up then with all 15 people in a meaningful way? So then you've just kind of done another ding to your brand because you probably only follow up with 5 or 7. And then those other people that you made this point of chatting with and getting a card and finding out what they need help with, you've forgotten about. And what happens then 6 months later when you bump into this person again? Or you run into them online, right? It's just pointless to go after that much quantity at these things because you're never going to do what you need to do. And that's tied into the next couple tips. Tip number 5, being present and mindful, right? And this I can't emphasize enough. And especially at this time of year, people are so kind of stressed and maxed out and overcommitted. But it's so important to just be present when you're talking with people and focusing on that other person you're engaged with, right? And also, being aware that there are people that are in this mode of need and maybe they're not following the same kind of tips or guidelines that you are. And all I can say is, we can't do anything about those other people, but you can just kind of avoid them or minimize your exposure to them and don't react because stuff like that's going to happen. It's again why people dread some of this, but just be mindful that you don't have to engage with that, right? We all have a choice. We don't have to. Everybody needs a bio break. You have to go to the bathroom. You have to go get a drink, whatever it might be. And be cautious of that overuse of the word leverage. I always talk about this here when you're really engaging with somebody. And there's cues that you pick up sometimes when people are really just looking to be opportunistic and try and
Mhm.
maybe take advantage of your goodwill, especially at this time of year.
Well, and this is a really good point, Sandy, on this point, because I think this speaks to the people that you meet sometimes at networking events with which bless their heart, they're probably nervous, they probably are not sure how to make the most of the networking opportunity. So when you interact with them, you feel like they are literally going through a checklist in their mind as they talk to you.
Right.
That I'm supposed to shake your hand firmly. I'm supposed to ask you, those are the kind of people that sometimes it feels like it just feels awkward all around dealing with people like that. Like they read a book and they decided to go out and practice on you on how how to do
Right.
some of these techniques. So just this is where your tip earlier about the just relax and have fun comes into play. So be present and mindful when you're talking to somebody, make eye contact with them. Don't be constantly looking over their shoulder to see if there's somebody better that you want to be talking to. If there is, talk to them for a little bit and then excuse yourself and go speak to the other person.
Right. That's the name tag scan, which I love to talk about, right? Don't
Right.
do the name tag scan. Keep your focus. So let's move on to number 6. So be sure to follow up, right? Stay in touch or occasional contact with people. Make sure you do what you say you're going to do, right? This is one of those things when you are talking about these exchanges of ideas or information, it's making sure that you've done those things that you've followed up on. There's this great quote here: fortune is in the follow-up. Most people who've had any type of sales training or marketing, we all know this, that this is the key. Because so many people talk a great game, but they don't execute. And when you execute on your commitments or your promises, that is nothing but, wonderful karma for your brand. And it reinforces part of who you are and what you're trying to put out there. So follow up is one of the main, most important things to all of this activity, right? It's what makes it from not being a waste of your time is to actually stay in touch then. And if you've made notes on the back of someone's card about what they're looking for, what they need help with, or a resource that they're interested in, make sure you do what's on the back of that card. You follow up, you send that information, and don't be that hit and run person. I mean, we've kind of beat this meaningful connections to death, but I think we're going to end here on this idea of just lightening up, right? That you don't have to take this so seriously. Once you get out of your head and think about focusing on the other folks in the room, it makes it a lot easier to not take it so seriously and to just relax and take some of the pressure off yourself for what you think you should be saying or how hard you should be shaking someone's hand or all those things. That you really just can go about it in much more of a social capacity, but with, of course, the mindset of being a professional and projecting the image or the brand that you want to project. And Maria, I'm sure you want to add some stuff here.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is all about what is that vibe and personality of your brand that you're trying to convey, and nothing will drive it home more effectively than how you are in person at an event. All your website could be absolutely beautiful and flawless. Your social media posts could be hilarious and engaging. But if somebody meets you at an event and you are on edge, tense, freaking out, all of those things, that's going to just negate everything that you've tried to build for your brand. So nothing solidifies your brand more than in-person meetings.
I agree. I mean, it's so important. And you just put that really well. Thank you. Thank you for that. And I do think, too, that, all of these things, we extroverts, it doesn't matter. Introverts are some of the best people at networking because they're great listeners and they usually are very curious and ask great questions. So
Hmm.
it's another scenario where these stereotypes of who's comfortable at this or who's good at it
Hmm.
fall away because it's sometimes the exact opposite of what you think. And if you go ahead,
No, I was going to say that just really sparked something for me. One of the things that's really hard, and this is something I really see the difference between extroverts and introverts at networking events. Being an extrovert, I feel like I can say this, but extroverts are very comfortable with sort of the pre networking, cocktailing, whatever in an event. Extroverts are really comfortable with sort of being in a group of more than two people, and having the conversation flow. Whereas I've noticed with intro, and this is a blanket statement, but many introverts that I know are much better with the one-on-one. When I sit down at the table, I'm going to engage in a meaningful conversation with the person next to me.
Right.
Either of those things are okay. I think what's important is if you are comfortable talking with a group of people, make sure if there's someone lurking on the outside that looks like they don't really have a place to go or they're trying to get in on your group, be self-aware enough to invite them into the group
That's
because
what I'm
they may not invite themselves. And so, it just makes it more fun.
right. And definitely because we can't, a lot of times people ask me the question, how do I bust into those groups? And I have ideas about that. We don't have time for them
I just
today.
I just I just lurk nearby and make eye contact
Right.
until someone invites me in.
Exactly. But what I talk about is the idea of what you said, and this is in my book, is about being the person who's aware and
Yes.
noticing those people and being the
Yeah.
person to welcome them in. That's what we can do, right? If we have this awareness of it, then we can do that.
Right.
So that's going to just put us to our last quote here that is very much about everything we talked about here. And it's also this idea that so much about networking is about, um, having this etiquette, right? That's what people have some anxiety about. But the etiquette is only manners. It's good manners, right? And the
Right.
idea of good manners are putting the other person at ease. So that just sort of, supports this whole idea that when you're out and about at these things, the goal is not to get yourself into a tizzy. It's to see if you can put other people at ease and engage them. And if we all think about that and think about this great quote from Maya Angelou, it will make a difference in how you approach these events and how you engage with people at them, right? You can't give someone the name tag scan and make them feel good about their encounter with you. It's
Hmm.
impossible. So think about all those things and think about the